episode 36 with Neil Donell. Neil is now the lead tenor singer in one of my favorite bands, Chicago, and he's a Toronto boy. He's had a fantastic career, a wonderful singer. I've always loved his singing and followed his career for a long, long time. And I sat down with my co-host Prine, and we talked about all of his life and getting into the band Chicago and all those great stories. So sit back, listen. This is Neil Donell. All right, well, we're rolling with Neil Donell. It's nice to have you. I've quietly followed your career for a long time. I think we just chatted here about mutual friends. I'm sure we have some mutual friends from the Toronto area. I'm a good friend of Pepe Francis and all those guys. Great guy. Yeah.
Great player, great guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And it's nice having you on the podcast here, and we're really very happy about your career and now singing with Chicago, and it must be just an absolute thrill. I know you've had some amazing moments in your life, but it's nice to kind of to see it just keeps rising and rising. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's been kind of one surprise after another for the last number of years. You know, it's been a lot of blessings. You know, I've been very fortunate. You know, it just goes to show you. You know, if you stay on top of your game, you know, and you conduct yourself with dignity and integrity, you never know what can happen at any age. You know, the phone could ring, and that's what happened to me. I was in New York in December of 2016 when the phone rang for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that story. Let's go back. I always like going back to the beginning and finding out where you came from. You're a Montreal boy originally, is that correct?
Yes, I wasn't born there, but I certainly spent my formative years there. You know, I think I was 2 or something when my father was transferred there, and I stayed there till I was till I graduated high school.
Oh, okay. Good.
In Quebec was at about, I think I was 17.
Yeah. And were you involved musically with anything when you're that age, or when you?
Oh yeah. I was, you know, in high school I was in a couple of bands in high school, and I used to MC the annual variety show there. Which was kind of a big deal. It was part of the Winter Carnival.
Yeah.
And I was part of a folk mass, a choir, you know, a bunch of different musical pursuits when I was a teenager.
So who was it when you first started singing that kind of got you wanting to sing? Were there certain artists, certain bands, certain singers, songwriters that really kind of made you jump into singing?
You know, a lot of different people influenced me over the years. Certainly, one of the ones I remember, and I met him a couple of years ago for the first time, was James Taylor. But, you know, I liked a lot of the classic rock stuff back then.
Yeah.
Zeppelin and the Doors. And when the first Chicago album came out, I was in high school. And, you know, that was the second band I was in. It was a horn band.
Oh, wow.
And we were doing Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and a couple of Lighthouse tunes. And, you know, since then I've become friends with all the Lighthouse guys. And, yeah, so it was a lot of different artists, you know, that I would sing anything any song that I enjoyed or I liked.
Do you remember what your first actual paid gig was?
Yeah. Those things stay with you because, you know, that's the designation of being a professional, right? You get paid for the first time. I think I was 14. I would have been 14, and it was a little chalet in a little park not far from where I lived, and there was a little dance there one night, and I think I made about $4.75.
That's pretty great.
Yeah,
that's good.
It was, I mean, you know, it was enough to make you feel like you were a pro.
Nowadays, $4 sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to make $4 right
now.
So then, from Montreal, where did you move to at that point?
Well, my family moved to New Brunswick where my father was originally from, actually to the northern part of the province. He was working for a company that owned 50 or 60 mining companies across the country. And I ended up doing that for a while. I ended up working in the mines, and I worked at a smelter, and I worked at a fertilizer plant for about 2 years.
Wow.
Until I figured out maybe this wasn't what I wanted to do for a living. Even though, it's good hard work, and I don't have a problem with that. So I ended up going to university in Fredericton, to the University of New Brunswick, to get out of it. And when I was in Fredericton, I ended up working with a local band there to work my way through university. It helped me to pay for it. So,
good old East Coast.
Yeah. When I finished up there, I headed back to Montreal. I stayed in Montreal for 2 years. Started doing session work in Montreal.
Yeah.
That was in the early 80s. And then I had a day job. I was actually a lab technician for a couple of years, and I got laid off when the recession came in the early 80s. And I knew that there was, a thriving session scene here in Toronto, and, I had a connection here through that with a production company. But so I ended up moving here and ended up never working for that particular production company. But over the course of, 2 or 3 years, I got a foothold in that business of the session business here.
Yeah.
And, became a staple in that circuit. And, that was my principal bread and butter for more than 20 years.
That was really back in the good old days when that stuff was just cranking out every day.
I still tell the story of one day in particular. I remember it would have been probably late 80s. I think it was 12 or 13 or 14 recording sessions in one day.
Wow.
One day. Running from studio to studio all day long. I think I started about 9 in the morning, and I got home about 11 that night.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, so I did the tally a few years ago and realized, in the course of my career, I had logged over 10,000 recording sessions.
That's crazy.
Good God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
It was stunning to realize I had done that many.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I still do them from time to time, but it's quite rare now, of course, because everything has changed.
When that was going on, it was probably a bit of everything, but there was a lot of jingle work probably as well.
Jingle work was probably 70 or 80% of it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And other things were, you'd work on movie soundtracks or television shows, anything that needed voices on it, you ended up... and then I had, a bunch of American clients I used to work for. One in Austria, one in Memphis.
Yeah.
And then some people I used to work for a little bit in Chicago and LA. So it was the Strictly Canada.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
In those days, there wasn't the technology there is today. You probably had to almost be there all the time in those spots.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You're never there. In fact, the two clients I have, the one in Austria and the one in Memphis, I've never met those people.
Wow.
Yeah, I've never met them. Almost everything is done remotely. I mean, case in point, the band had a little thing with NBC TV in Chicago a couple of weekends ago that we all did like this.
Yeah. This is the time to be stuck at home because you have lots of technology to get you through it and be able to do conversations like this. And, we've talked before on another podcast, Brian and I, about if this was 30 years ago, I think everyone would start going insane.
Very good point. This is the thing that's kind of keeping us connected now.
Absolutely. You bet it is.
Yeah. So I guess we can be grateful for that. Yeah.
So when you're busy doing all the jingle work and session work, were you at all working on any form of solo career, singing wise, or were you just so slammed with that type of work that was your everything?
Yeah, I was so busy with doing that. There wasn't a heck of a whole lot of time for other things, and I did end up doing a couple of. I was approached by people, all the time. I ended up working with a couple of guys here in Toronto, once again in the early to mid '80s, who were doing, who were songwriters, producers, and songwriters. And I released a couple of singles with them. I think three, maybe four even. And they all did really well. They all were top 10, top 5 in Canada, sort of adult contemporary MOR sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, because I would also, one of the things I also did a lot of was you would do song demos for people, for writers, Yeah. I worked with people like Stan Meisner and, Eddie Schwartz, a lot of different people. And these songs would get pitched to other artists,
Yeah.
They were writing for other artists. So a lot of people who wouldn't normally hear my voice, would hear my voice, like Joe Cocker, Roger Daltrey, Kenny Rogers, people like that. Michael McDonald, a lot of people heard my voice. So my name got around a little bit. Then at one point, there was a guy here in Toronto, a pretty well-known Canadian writer-producer, very talented guy named Tim Thorney.
Yeah, I know Tim.
You know Tim?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tim lives up in Collingwood now.
Yeah.
And he got into the country thing, when that was starting to happen in the early to the mid-80s, the whole new country thing. He went down to Nashville and wrote 3 tunes with a guy named Don Schlitz.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
Yeah, you know that name, yeah. Well, speaking of Kenny Rogers, the Gambler, that was the Don Schlitz tune, right?
Yeah.
So Tim came back with the tunes, and they were written, but they hadn't been demoed, and they called me to demo the tunes out because I had sort of gotten a reputation that I could cover virtually every genre, from country to metal to jazz to whatever. So they called me and asked me to sing the demos for them for presentation purposes, and they were dealing with Sony at the time. Sony was shopping the demos, and the people at Sony heard my voice and said, "Well, why don't you do a record with this guy?" So I ended up doing 2 records with them under a pseudonym.
Don Nielsen.
Yeah.
Don Nielsen, you bet. We know it well. Oh, sure.
Yeah, and it's the songs still get airplay, and I think I was nominated for 3 Geminis, Junos, and a whole slew of Canadian Country Music Awards. I think I got nominated for 5 or 6 of those, but that was it. So I did 3 records, and they were fun.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the country stuff, and I remember back in the day when they were out, I was doing a lot of front of house work, live work. I had a little sound company, and we'd go out and do a lot of shows. And your album was one of the albums I always used to play to test the PA out. It was that, and Donald Fagen, the Nightfly album, and interesting enough, Joel Feeney, his country album. I really enjoyed.
Joel's great. A good friend of mine.
Yeah, so those 3 albums used to circulate, and I used to use them for kind of pre-show music for quite a long time. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. All of a sudden, you take on a country career for a while, and that becomes popular for you.
Yeah, well, I always liked country music. I was a fan of the genre. When I was working in the mines, the way you would get to the mines every day, because nobody would take their car on the mine road because it was a disaster. So you would get picked up by a guy in a van. You'd be 10 or 12 of them in a van, and they would take the seats out and put wooden bench seats in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they could accommodate a lot of people. It was about a 25 or 30 mile run to the mine one way. And there was only one radio station in the town, and morning was the time they slotted country music.
Oh yeah.
So on the way to the mine, that's what you would hear. I mean, it was Charlie Rich and Charlie Pride and George Jones, and it was old school stuff back then. Before Vince Gill came along and people like that, and Reba and Shania.
The good old stuff.
Yeah, but that's the stuff I sort of learned, and I became a giant George Jones fan, and ended up working with Shania on something at one point, and did a session one time with Vince Gill, and I worked with Billy Ray Cyrus on a thing one time. So, it was fun.
It's funny, we do a lot of work with Charlie Pride, and when you mentioned the smelter, he used to work in one up in Washington State when he was getting into the music business. So, and all kinds of come around. I've heard this story from him too, working and taking the trucks in and all that stuff. And
he's so great. Even even to this, to this.
87 years old, and he's still going at it.
Yeah, he looks great, and he still sounds good.
Yeah, excellent.
Remarkable.
Yeah, Brian has booked Charlie in Canada. For how many years have you booked Charlie now? For
how far back do you want to go? 32, 33 years maybe? Yeah. Something like that. And one of the first dates we did was Campbellton, New Brunswick. So that's why I remember that area quite well.
Really, yeah. Well, I was over in Bathurst. That's where
were you? Yeah, we worked that arena there too. You bet. Yeah.
Well, country music is huge up there. Yeah.
Oh, you bet it is. Absolutely.
So, So that was, it was an interesting experience. I had never been involved with a major label before, and it was a bit of an eye opener, to be honest with you. But to get an understanding of how that business worked wasn't a bad thing going forward.
Yeah.
It certainly was eye opening, though, as I said, because I was, the whole session thing, the whole studio thing. You kind of live in a bubble.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, it's a very controlled environment. Only the top people get to do it, and it pays well. The scale payments are quite good, and you get residual payments. But once again, that's all in the past now. That's all virtually vanished. So, yeah.
Did you do any pre-records for any of the TV shows that are happening? I'm trying to think of what was happening at that time. I know there's a lot of pre-records with Rita McNeil's show and all that. I was on virtually every pre-recorded Rita McNeil thing.
Oh. Wow.
And also I worked for 5 or 6 years on Canadian Idol.
Oh, good.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. So
did you do the Hunter shows as well?
I didn't do the Hunter shows, and that was a little before my time. What I ended up doing was the anniversary show that he had.
Right.
That's a while ago now. It's probably 10, 15 years ago.
I remember it well, yep.
Yeah. Don Reed was on it, and a bunch of
sure was.
The originals were on it, but I was just so I was involved with that, but not as Don Nielsen, just as me.
Oh, good.
And then I did another show, just came to mind, was How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria? That was the one, that show that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't remember what else I've done over the years, but
well, I certainly heard one of your recent projects. A mutual friend of ours, Hayward Parrott, had a client by the name of Frank Mills that I've looked after for 30 years that came in and did the Flanders Field song that Frank had written, and boy, I'll tell you, it's a beauty. You did a wonderful job on that song.
Yeah, that was well, Frank is an extraordinarily talented musician, and of course Hayward,
oh boy, one
of the country's best producer engineers ever.
Best set of ears on anybody, you bet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh man, just world class, absolutely world class, and such a lovely guy. So yeah, that was fun to work on. Of course, it was kind of hits you.
It does.
It's a pretty emotional thing, and it was so well written. Yeah,
excellent.
That was an honor to do that.
Did you do any touring when you did the country stuff at all, or you?
A little bit. It was so competitive back then.
Yeah.
And Sony were putting all their money behind it. Prescott Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was there. They were really trying to get them established in the U.S. and with mixed results, I think. But that marketplace was so congested. The labels were just signing acts like crazy and throwing things against the wall. And if your first record did okay, you had an option to maybe do a second one. And of course, a lot of them didn't. A lot of them fell by the wayside. So getting on a touring spot as an opening act was, really tough.
Yeah.
BMG was the label that were really putting a push behind their artists. That's why Charlie Major, one of the reasons Charlie did so well, because BMG had a lot of votes going on in the various places, and they were really promoting heavily, and they were pushing him hard, and it paid off. So
Yeah.
He did very well. But once again, it was very hard to break into that U.S. market, and they were never able to do that with him either. In a substantial way. It's just I had my experience with it. There were people in Nashville that heard what I had done, and they were very, very interested. And so much so that the country rep in Sony flew down there one night to find out there was a buzz going on about me. And because there was a couple of reviews, a couple of the singles that I had done that were, they really said some very, very glowing things. And this one particular guy, this guy, if he didn't like you and didn't like what you were doing, he could be pretty harsh. But he said some glowing things about me. Robert K. Orman?
Yeah.
That guy, yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote a couple of great reviews, and so a buzz started. So the Sony rep flew down, and then he called me from the plane on the way back home, and he with the old good news, bad news scenario. He said the bad news is they're not interested in you as an artist, but the good news is they're interested in your songwriting. Yeah. Tree Publishing. So if you want to send them songs, they'd be more than willing. But I had a career going, and I found it a little disheartening.
Yeah.
But it was part of my education into how it really worked. You could, the American artists could come and access our market to their heart's content. It was easy. But for us to do the same down there, the door did not swing both ways.
It's worse now.
Yeah. Well, protectionism,
Exactly.
Wears a lot of different hats,
Yeah.
So it was tough, and I know a lot of people were putting great hope, and great store on penetrating that marketplace, and it just, like I said, it was so congested down there, and they had so many artists down there. For them to take on somebody new, other than the very few exceptions, like Shania, of course, she had Mutt Lange in her corner, and that whole thing spoke for itself. And of course, Terry Clark, she was Canadian, but when she finally got acknowledged here in Canada, it was like gravy to her because it was kind of unexpected. But she had so much success down there that, she began to get acknowledged here. So
it's too bad that, that has to happen, right? There's so much talent here in Canada, and you have to really become popular somewhere else to be recognized in your own country. And especially back in that time in the 90s, especially for country, man, that was tough. And there were so many. I know a lot of artists went down and they'd get a deal. They spend $100,000, $200,000 plus on an album, and then they would just shelve it.
Yeah.
And that was it. Over and over again. You thought you had a career. You going to Nashville, making a big album. Your life is set, and no, they had that much money at that time. They could just, we don't feel this, so we're just going to write this one off and hold you up for a few years. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a guy, a Toronto-based writer-producer, who got a lot of success. He wrote Kelly Clarkson's first hit, which escapes me now, Flying, something to do with flying. And he had a project on the side with somebody else here in Canada, and the name of the project escapes me. But my understanding is that the record label had spent over $250,000 on it, and it just got shelved. It never got released. They just ate it and it went away. And fortunately for him, in his contract, he had a big advance.
Yeah. And
then he ran on a great streak of luck. He ended up winning the green card lottery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, God. If I remember those.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up relocating to LA, and he's been there ever since, and has had a very successful career down there. But most things are few and far between, as you know, and you're exactly right. That's what happens here. You've got to go outside of the country sometimes and get success there before you get acknowledged here at home.
Absolutely.
That happens a fair amount. I think that's pretty common knowledge.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah. Unfortunate, but and then you get a few that end up moving down there, and then they just have to move back because it dries up.
Yeah.
And and that's tough on a career too. You moved to Nashville and you've got a few songs under your belt and things are looking good. I'm not sure if it's better in that circumstance to had a bit of success and then have to kind of walk your way back home again, than to just have it shelved and go on to something else. I don't know. I'm not sure what the better one of the two is, because it's hard on you to have that success and have to kind of walk away from it. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I know somebody that you know. I won't mention his name, but exactly the situation he found himself in.
Yeah.
He was going back and forth to Nashville all the time, and he had a little bit of success, with one song in particular with a major artist down there. And then it just kind of dried up. It just went away, and the deal went away, and now he's back here. And of course, it's the old story about Nashville. That's why aren't there any napkins in Nashville? You know that joke, that story?
No.
Wait, I got an idea for a song.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But it is true, though.
Everybody in Nashville is either a budding artist or a writer, right?
That's right. Exactly.
I remember the times I went down there, and going into the studios, and the cork bulletin boards in the lobbies of the studios would have people's business cards on them, and they'd be people that stack their cards on top of each other. They'd be like 10 or 12 deep.
Yeah, it's pretty competitive.
Very.
If you happen to get through the clutter, it's a great place to be, and it's a great ride if you can get on the right wave. But sure is frustrating.
Yeah, if you're one of the A people, if you're one of the people that are, the Paul Franklins and the Vince Gills and people like that.
Yeah.
You're in a good place, but
exactly.
It's always the same. It's like the old adage about 1% of the fishermen catch 99% of the fish.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's the same thing with musicians. About 1%.
Oh boy,
them get about 99% of the studio work. I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But that's a different skill. There are great players who can't necessarily translate their skills into the studio, and vice versa.
Yep.
And vice. So that's pretty common too.
So when you finish up the country stuff, and what was kind of the next thing? And I'm sure at that time, the studio land busyness in Toronto was starting to fade a little bit.
It began to taper off in a meaningful way, in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
There was still stuff going on, and for me. The next little pivot was getting involved with an organization that's based actually in London, Ontario, a company called Genes and Classics.
Yep, I know them very well.
Yeah, and they've been around for more than 20 years now. And I guess so, as you probably know, which your audience may not, they do predominantly sort of classic rock and pop concerts with symphony orchestras. All over Canada and the U.S.
Yeah.
And they have, I think it's more than 50 shows now, 50 different shows.
Wow.
So I'd known people that had been involved with that company for a number of years, and they had been talking to the owner about me for a long time, and finally an opportunity arose where they wanted to, hire me, and they brought me in to do a show, and in London, Ontario.
Yeah.
And then I sort of became involved with them I haven't done a show now with them for, a little, since I've been with Chicago, because the schedules conflict, of course.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing about 10 or 12 different shows with them. And because I have the ability to sound like a lot of different people, and cover the various genres,
yeah.
I ended up doing, one show I'm Sting. As a Sting in the Police show I do.
Yeah.
I do a James Taylor show. I did a Beach Boys show. Me and a girl, a lady named Ricky Franks, a very, very well-known, fantastic Toronto-based singer.
Yeah.
Do a show called Shaken Not Stirred.
Oh, yeah.
Where we do, it's all the themes. It's 17 or 18 themes of James Bond, from the James Bond films.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's great.
Gosh, there was a couple of Beatles shows I did. Oddly enough, they did a Chicago Earth, Wind & Fire, Blood, Sweat and Tears show, and I got hired to do it one time after I had been a guest with Chicago, not when I was with the band. Yeah. But they hired me to do the Blood, Sweat and Tears stuff.
Oh.
and the Earth, Wind, and Fire stuff. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of weird. Great. It's the way it worked out. So
don't give him the Chicago stuff.
Yeah. So I ended up doing that for about, probably 15 years.
Oh, great.
And if I'm available, and of course these things are booked months, sometimes years in advance, these shows. So the opportunity doesn't arise for me to do them much anymore. But who knows what'll happen one day?
Well, it's a great thing for the orchestras, because obviously their markets are difficult to get people out to nowadays, and I think, bringing classic rock in with an orchestra, it really is, I think, saved a lot of these orchestras. I mean, those a lot of the biggest shows are these Genes and Classics type shows. It saves their butt sometimes.
You're exactly right. We all came to realize that, and we heard this from people in different orchestras. What they would make from these pop shows would allow them to do the Mahler and the Beethoven and the Chopin shows. Which it's all season ticket for the most part for those things.
You bet it did.
Sometimes they're not as well attended as they would like, of course, but it balances out. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny though. I toured a lot with Jim Witter. Do you know Jim? Jim did it. Yeah. See those close. Yeah. Jim and I are really great friends.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Great musician. Talented guy.
We've done a bunch of orchestra gigs, and with his Billy Joel Elton John show, and it's so funny. And I'm sure you've run into this a bunch of times when you come into an orchestra type show and they're doing a rock and roll type thing. The place will be packed. They're doing 2 or 3 nights of shows. But man, there'd be so many people in that orchestra that just hate it. They think it's the worst thing in the world. And I've run into some conversations backstage when people in the orchestra, and they just think it's the worst thing in the world, even though it's the thing that's keeping them alive and keeping them being able to do shows. But
I would notice, like, when you were rehearsing it, because I don't know if it worked the same with you, but with Genes and Classics, you do a full run through of the show on the afternoon of the show, and you could tell who was the people that it was over. They were out of there like a shotgun. They were just boom gone. Yeah. And then some other people would come up and they would say nice things, and they, I wasn't doing much of the. I mean, Genes and Classics did they do a Zeppelin show, Eagles. The other show I used to do was Journey and Supertramp.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
But Zeppelin and Queen were their big shows for a long time.
Yeah.
And for some people, that music was a little harsh to them. But when I would do like a James Taylor show, which I did with them a bunch of times. Virtually everybody liked the softer stuff, as long as you didn't take their heads off, in terms of volume and sonically, and it wasn't, they didn't mind it for the most part. That was my sense of things anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the James Taylor shows must have been really great. I'm a huge fan.
Me too.
I had the opportunity to, after a while, Genes and Classics had this sort of staple of their own musicians that they would use. And then at some point, I had my own band here in Toronto. And at some point, the leader of Genes and Classics said, well, if you want to bring your own band, you can do that. So I started bringing my own guys. And they knew the material a little bit better because we had done it outside of the symphony shows as well.
Yeah,
I had done a bunch of different shows. So I had people like Lou Pamonti. He was my keyboard player. Also played keyboards with a guy named Don Breitup.
Yep.
Of Monkey House,
Yep.
Two great musicians. Paul DeLong played drums for me. He was with Kim Mitchell for a long time. And
you think he could have got some better players?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alpine was my guitar player.
Wow.
And I had, great backup singers, Catherine Rose and Stephanie Martin and Palma. So I had these really, really sort of the A-team, the Canadian A-team in my, behind me,
I guess you did.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody loved the music. So, and you could feel it, everybody was totally into, to reproducing it as best we possibly could. And I did end up, that's a funny story. I was in the hotel gym at the Four Seasons in Georgetown in 2018, touring with the band with REO Speedwagon that year.
Yeah.
And I'm in the gym, and who comes into the gym was James.
Wow.
He was touring with Bonnie Raitt.
Yeah.
At the time. And so him and I had a lovely chat for about 10 or 15 minutes. Because he knows Lou Pomani and Bob Mann, of course, I mentioned earlier. And, we had a few names in common. And just out of the blue, there he was.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah. And
cool.
I had a little interaction with his sister not long ago as well. So,
one of the things that I've been happy about this whole COVID situation is that the James Taylor tour that was coming through Ontario got postponed because Brian and I were supposed to be on a tour, and I was going to miss the show. And I wanted to see that. I thought the combination of Bonnie Raitt and James Taylor on the same show, loved them both. And then I saw they were coming through. It's like, oh, look to London. No, can't get to the London show. No, can't get to the Toronto show. And so now it's postponed. So now I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that when it comes back around again, I'll be able to go see it. So
yeah, it's a great combo, the two of them. And I think the U.S. tour he was doing, or at least part of it, was supposed to be with Jackson Browne.
Oh wow!
Who tested positive?
Wow.
A month or two ago. Yeah.
Did you know John Prine very well at all, or have crossed paths with him over the years?
I never met John. I was an enormous fan of his.
Yeah.
As any songwriter would be. He was, to me, he was an American treasure.
Absolutely.
One of the best songwriters that ever has been produced in pop. I just think his take on things, Mm-hmm. I wrote a song some years ago called Beeswax.
Yeah.
That was inspired by him because I remember reading an interview with him, and he said he would sometimes write a song around one line that he needed to say. He'd write the entire song around that one, just so he could say that one line in the song. So I ended up, for the third record I did as Don Nielsen, which I had free reign to do, I ended up writing a song called Beeswax. It was very much like a John Prine song. And oddly enough, in all places, it got a lot of airplay in Europe, specifically in France.
Wow, that's great.
Very weird, yeah.
So let's chat a bit about your Chicago time now. Obviously, the experience must be fantastic. I've been a huge Chicago fan as well for years. Talk a little bit, I know you've probably told the story a bunch, but talk about that phone call you got in New York and what kind of happened after that.
Yeah, it was. I was sitting in a restaurant on Broadway at the beginning of December in 2016, I believe it was. Yeah, 2016. And it was actually, initially I got an email from somebody, and I thought it was a solicitation.
Yeah.
They were actually looking for work from me. The band was off, and found out I was involved with various projects, and did I need this person or that person as part of the crew? And I sort of wrote it off to that. And my partner at the time, who I was with, she said, "No, I think there might be something more to this. I think there's something more to this." So we got back to the hotel after dinner, and I got another email, and they asked me, said, we'd like to get in touch with you. Can you give us a phone number? You're a hard guy to get a hold of. So, okay, now I was intrigued. So I gave them my phone number. The next afternoon, we were walking down on the High Line, beautiful December day, and the phone rang, and it was somebody in management. Spent about an hour on the phone with this gentleman, and he expressed to me that it was coming up to the induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That was a few months away. And they were sort of kind of reconfiguring things leading up to that. And one of the things that they'd been thinking about for some long time was making some changes to the lineup.
Yeah. And
they'd been aware of me through some YouTube stuff that they'd seen and some other things that had been brought to their attention, apparently on the tour bus. So, long story short, I ended up a few months later on a soundstage in Ohio with the band. just before a corporate show they were doing. And my understanding was that, here we go, and I packed my bag and put everything into place. I had the tour schedule, I had a return airline ticket from, I think it was Houston or Dallas at the end of that first leg of the tour, which was a little over 3 weeks, maybe a month. So everything was in place. I got down there, and there was been a lot of miscommunication. Some people had taken some liberties with some stuff that they shouldn't have. And some people, like for me, I was just going down there, we were rehearsing. It was like a 5-hour rehearsal.
Yeah.
And there was another guy there. They had to bring in a bass player because I knew I wasn't the bass player. I didn't, I never said that I was. They never asked me to play bass. They just wanted me to come and sing. So I went down. There was another guy there. And we were going back and forth for 4 or 5 hours. I would sing a tune. He'd sing a tune, the same tune. I just kind of thought they were kind of feeling out to see what they wanted him to a couple of tunes, to see what he sounded better on and stuff like that. And that was fine, And at the end of the 5 hours, they asked me to come into this room. And it was kind of then that they told me that, much to my surprise, they were going to go with the other guy. And, and I kind of was, first of all, I didn't know what they were talking about. Because it didn't make any sense to me. But they were obviously under the impression that it was just an audition.
Oh, yeah.
To me, it wasn't an audition. If I had known it was an audition, I wouldn't have gone, personally. Yeah. I don't do that. If somebody wants to hire me, I'll send you some stuff, but I don't audition much anymore. I
don't blame you.
That's done. I'm sort of done with that. So, with all due respect. So anyway, the next day I was on a flight back home, and that was it. And so that gentleman ended up spending, I think he did 2 years with the band at that point.
Yeah.
And I think he's a good player. He was solid. He was a real tenor. He could sing everything with well, the word I'm going to use is competent. I think he's really competent, very good, did a fine job. And that was it, So that didn't work out. That came to a head. Ended up there were some conflicts that came about. It's really not my place to talk about. Yeah. But that relationship ended. And in the fall of 2017, I think it was October or November, I'm just sitting here at home, and like I said, I had done some guest spots with the band, a bunch of them, and I had formed a relationship with the guys. I truly liked these guys. I got to hang around with them. They're very nice people, really down to earth. Yeah. So the phone rang, and it was Lee Loughnane, the trumpet player, one of the founding members. Yeah. And but before him, the manager had called me up, letting me know he was going to come. He was going to call me, and he called, and he basically, just said, "Look, we got to make a change again here. You want to come sing with us?" And I said, "Let me think about this. Let me think. Now, what am I doing for the next 2 or 3 years?" "Oh yeah, okay." So, but the bottom line was that, I was fine. I still had a good career. I've done okay. I wasn't worried about where my next meal was coming from or paying a bill. And it certainly wasn't about money, because that really wasn't even talked about much. It was just, we liked each other. There was a mutual respect. Lee Loughnane is one of the kindest, sweetest, nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. Yeah. He's just wonderful. And so is Robert, and so is Jimmy. These are the founding members. And the manager, Peter Chiavarelli, who's been the manager for 40 years. Wow. This man is...
wow.
He's just one of the kindest, nicest. He's, on the other side of the coin, you don't want to make Peter upset. So I'll leave it at that.
My type of guy.
They have been nothing but kind and generous and supportive to me. I can't say enough about them all as people. So, that happened, and then I ended up being January of the next year, of 2018. I was on a plane to Burbank, and we spent a week in a soundstage in Burbank, California, rehearsing.
Yeah.
And that's because they were doing something that they'd never done before. They were doing the entire second album in sequence.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first half of the show. Because that album was under consideration by the Grammy Committee for a Hall of Fame award.
Yeah.
The first Chicago record achieved that. So the second one was being considered. So in an effort to sort of move that forward, the band decided to tour that whole record, which had the ballet on it, of course, and It Better End Soon, and a lot of great songs on that record. So that was my introduction to the band. And then we did one corporate show at the end of that week. I went home for a few days, and then boom, we hit it hard. We were out touring for the rest of the year. Yeah.
So what was the actual the corporate gig? Probably was the first real gig, but what was the first kind of walk-in audience gig? What venue was that?
It was in San Francisco somewhere. It was a fundraiser for somebody, Tommy Lasorda.
Oh, yeah.
What was it?
It was, I think it had to do, it was a charity that his wife had founded, I think it was for animal welfare of some sort.
Yeah.
You know, it was I think we did a 90-minute set. You know, the corporates are usually an hour or 90 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
And the band does probably 10 or 20 of those a year.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, some of those are amazing. We did one last year for a pharmaceutical company outside of Pittsburgh that was all for charity. It was the head of this pharmaceutical company who throws this event every year, and all the money is given to charity. Yeah. And it's always a double bill, and our opening act was Peter Frampton.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? That's great.
You know, we've done shows with, we toured with REO that year. The year before, when I was guesting with them, it was Doobies.
Yeah.
We've done shows with the Beach Boys, Kenny Loggins. The guy who wrote "There's a new kid in town, everybody's talking."
I know the song.
Yeah.
J.D. Souther. We did a bunch of dates with him as our opening act. Yeah. So, yeah, we've rubbed shoulders with some pretty amazing people, you know. I mean, these guys travel in those circles.
Yeah,
you know, they know everybody.
Yeah.
That's good.
So,
good.
A couple questions. What's your favorite, I would say maybe the era of Chicago you enjoy, or do you have some favorite songs where this is the song I look forward to every night doing? Do you have a list of a few of those?
There are so many. You know, I don't have a preference. You know, I mean, the very first tune I sing every night is it's Question 67 and 68.
Yeah.
Which is off the first record, which was a Robert Lamb composition. And to me, there's a majesty about that song that just never fails to just totally get me pumped. You know, the adrenaline of that piece. And but you know, every night when we do the ballads, you know, if You Leave Me Now, of course, is always still huge.
Yeah.
But then in the second set, we do A Hard Habit to Break. You know, I guess I thought you'd be here forever.
Yeah.
And you know, our love was meant to be. You gotta last forever. When we do those, people go crazy.
Oh yeah.
They go berserk for the ballads, you know. But I mean, then there's 25 or 64, and then there's, you know, Robert. Some nights when he sings, does anybody know what time it is? I mean, it's always great, but there's some nights I have to turn around and look at him to see if he's not 20 years old.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's a great compliment. That's great.
Oh God, he sounds great, and you know, Lou Pardini covers the Terry Kath vocals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he does Make Me Smile, and we used to do Dialogue together, and. You know, there's just such great material. Just You and Me is another huge favorite of mine.
Yeah.
You know, just so in answer to your question, yeah, I like everything from every era. You know, I mean, even in the last studio record that they did, you know, before I joined the band, there's some great cuts on that record.
Yeah.
More Will Be Revealed. I mean, that's classic Chicago. If you get a chance after this, go on YouTube or somewhere on Spotify and listen to More Will Be Revealed. It's classic Chicago.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
It's Jimmy Panko's horn writing that makes, and Robert's writing, his voicings that, that's what makes the Chicago sound.
So what are the guys like now as far as hitting the stage? Obviously, they've been doing it a long, long time. Is there any rituals before you hit out on stage, or is it everyone kind of does their own thing and heads out and they start doing it, or how does that get approached?
Yeah, well, everybody's, before the show, everybody's kind of in their dressing rooms. Then we get, our tour managers come down and give us a production manager. They give us the heads up and let us know it's time to start walking,
Yeah.
Get the in-ears in, and we get up there, and, the band is sort of split half and half. Half are on one side of the stage, half on the other. But at that point, we're kind of bouncing off the walls.
Yeah.
The energy is pretty... It's pretty astonishing. Literally, we're literally jumping up and down. I'm stretching and doing push-ups and anything to sort of try to even out, the adrenaline so that it doesn't spike too much, when you first get out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the camaraderie is amazing. Everybody is. I mean, I'm telling you, when the support you feel out there, and when you see us smiling on stage, at things and. It's so genuine. There's absolutely nothing contrived about it. Every single night, we feel not only grateful, but honored to be there.
Yeah.
Robert sometimes will say, when he first starts talking during the first set, he'll say, "We're blessed and we know it." He will tell the audience that. And I know Robert. Him and I have become very, very good friends over the last few years. And this is a man with great dignity and great integrity, and an enormous heart. He's very private, like those guys are, and justifiably so. When you get to know them, you understand how grateful they are. This is why they're still doing it, because they're supposed to be. Yeah.
Well, it shows if you go see a Chicago concert now. When they hit the stage,
You bet it does.
It doesn't seem like they've been doing it that long. The energy is all there, and they're not phoning it in. It's you can tell it's they're enjoying every minute of it.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, everybody, and the band. A lot of people have said, you're never going to please everybody, and people don't like change. They get used to something, and you throw a change, and sometimes they don't take to it. Other times, most people like the new lineup, and certainly Robert and Jimmy and Lee like the new lineup, and a lot of it has to do. The rhythm section is different than it's ever been. Wally Reyes was a percussionist before, and he comes from a long line of his father he's kind of a legend in Las Vegas. I mean, he played with the Rat Pack, all those people.
Yeah.
Ray Newton and Johnny Mathis. So Wally comes from this place where not only does he have great finesse and great feel and great chops, but he's got great time too.
Yeah.
And he can lay down, and Tristan Bowden, one of the great drummers of all time, and Danny Serafine, another guy, another monstrously talented individual. But Wally brings this really great combination of things. And then Brett Simons, the bass player, who, was with Fiona Applegate and Brian Wilson. He toured for years with Dwight Yoakam.
Oh, yeah.
And who else is the other one? I can't think of some of the other artists, but I mean, he's a really musical bass player. So those two guys together, and with Ray Islas on percussion, I mean, the foundation is funkier and hipper, and I think it's ever been. It's really amazing. If you ever see any Wally's drum cams that he posts on his Facebook page,
I've seen some. Yeah, it's really good.
Highly recommended. Yeah. You see how much finesse is involved with his playing.
Yeah.
So,
what size of entourage do you have on the road out there?
The touring company is nearly 40 people. Yeah, there's 3 buses just for band. The band has 3 tour buses.
Wow.
So yeah, we're
incredible.
Really, there's 1 tour bus for crew, and then there's the truck drivers and stuff. Yeah, we are in my tour bus number 3, in the rhythm section, and myself. And the assistant tour manager. So there's only 4 of us.
Oh, nice.
In a bus that can accommodate, a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So we're not cramped. It's Well, this is a rare circumstance even these days. We don't we get to sleep in a hotel every night.
Okay.
Oh, that's great. Oh boy.
No matter where we go, even if we get there at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, we check into a hotel room.
That's good.
And and we get to stay in some great places. We're often in a Four Seasons or a Ritz Carlton's, and not always, but a lot of times, if the city has one, we're often in places like that. So
Not at the Microtel anytime, or?
we have actually. If you end up, sometimes we end up staying in an airport hotel because we've got to get a flight out the next morning, and the venue is too far away, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we don't want to stay too close to the venue because that means getting up that much earlier to get to the airport. So we do spend a fair amount of time at airport hotels.
Yeah.
Just because it's more convenient.
Exactly. I'll wrap up soon. I know we've taken a lot of your time. One question I was thinking about: how did you find the Chicago fans accepting of new guy coming in? How was that experience for you?
Well, that's a kind of almost another conversation in itself. But I'll make the story short because the first year I took a lot of heat.
Yeah.
And what some people refer to as I got a lot of shade thrown on me. I came from nowhere. Nobody knew who I was, especially in America.
Yeah.
And, I was stepping into big shoes. Peter Cetera.
Yeah.
Remember, Jason Sheff had been with the band for 25 years. Jason had a big face.
Yeah.
And even Jeff after him, had gotten a following as well. So, and it's the first time the band had ever hired basically a standalone frontman. It had always been a bass player singer.
Yeah.
So I came in, I played guitar in a few tunes, but I was a standalone front guy. But what I brought, I think I brought something different in my interpretive skills to the way I read the songs. It may be, not to take anything away from my predecessors because they were all, brilliantly talented guys. But I think I sort of brought a freshness that my approach was a little bit different than what people were used to. So over time, people gradually got used to it. And, the haters, and there were, people, if they want to find you and voice their disapproval of you, they will get to you.
Yeah.
So I had my share of that. And, it was surprising to me sometimes, disconcerting, disheartening at times in the beginning. Because some of these people were, there's no other word to use but vicious, and it's a particular demographic of people that would do it,
Yeah.
And so I had to, and the guys in the band, got wind of it, and they would often come to my defense, in social media. And I think, what happened one night, I think the turning point was, or one of the turning points was, I got hired. One of the reasons I got brought on was because they knew I could cover all three voices.
Oh, yeah.
At any given time. And they thought if somebody got sick, I could step in and do that. And that ended up happening. I ended up subbing in for Lou. Lou got sick at one point. We all got sick, actually. I got very sick last fall. But Lou got sick and lost his voice for a better part of a tour, so I had to do his tunes. And then Robert got vertigo and had to... Robert had missed one show in 52 years.
Wow.
One show in 52 years. And then he got a case of vertigo and missed, I think it was 3 or 4 shows. So I ended up doing his tunes one night. Actually, 3 or 4 nights, rather. And so I think when people realized that maybe there was a little more to me than they thought,
Yeah.
and gave me a chance, I think a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people changed their minds about me. So... But like I said, everybody that steps into a position that, from somebody else is going to take some heat.
Yeah.
Look at Kelly, who filled in for Lou Graham and has been with Forder for years. I mean, there are still people who don't think Kelly is Lou. Mm. And Lou's not, Kelly's not Lou, and Lou's not Kelly. But, Kelly stepped up and he's great. And there are other people too that have had to, stepping into those shoes is tough, because people. So one of the things I had to learn to do was remember, and I always did it anyway, that you got to give people what they're used to hearing. I can't let my interpretive skills get too broad. People need to hear what they want to hear. When they come to a show, they want to hear what they remember. So I endeavor most of the time to get as close to those original recordings, without making it sound, like karaoke or it's contrived.
Yeah.
So that's the balance you have to find, when you're doing the material of artists that's been around for a long time, that are people it's very much imprinted on their consciousness. You have to tread that very fine line. And I think it took a while to get there, but I think I've been pretty successful at it now at this point.
Good. I've watched a few videos just over the last few days and of you singing, and it's very much like that. I've noticed you've really studied it a lot, but yet there's still you in it.
Exactly. This is it. Mm-hmm. And I had the conversations with Robert. Robert wanted to make sure that I enjoyed myself, but make sure that I marked certain parts of the song, that I did them as they were recorded.
Yeah.
And I completely got that. Every time him and I would have a discussion about something. We had one just before Vegas. He told me about something. He said it was in Searching So Long. I was taking a little bit of a liberty with a melody in some place, and he said, "Could you just not do that in this place, but over there in the next part? Yeah, go for it."
Yeah. And
I totally got what he meant, and so they're the writers, and they're the principals of the band. They're the bosses. So you gotta do what the bosses tell you to do. Robert introduces everybody in the band in the second set.
Yeah.
Just before he does beginnings. And when he introduces me now, he always tells the audience that I have breathed new life into all the great Chicago songs, especially the ballads.
Great.
So when he gives me that vote of confidence and tells that to the audience,
must feel great.
That reinforces that that I'm on the right track.
That's great.
Well, it sounds great.
Excellent.
I've loved listening to it, and I hope to as soon as the touring season gets back on track, I'd love to see you in the role, because I've always loved your voice, and
me too.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better person for the job, and I'm really happy for you. I think it's it's really great.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a great blessing, and I'm very grateful. We just go forward as best we can, and with that kind of feeling in your heart. I think that's always the best approach.
Yeah,
excellent.
I'm going to wrap up one quick little question I like to ask everybody, and
sure.
Being with Chicago and you tour and play all over the place, you've probably kind of written off some of your bucket list places of where you've wanted to perform. But do you have any places yet in the world that you haven't, venues that you haven't performed at yet, that's on your bucket list that you're hoping to get to perform at?
Well, there's a couple. I mean, we've done the Forum in L.A., and we've done the Greek Theater there, in those two places.
Yeah.
The year before I joined, I know they did 3 or 4 nights in a row at the Hollywood Bowl. That's a place I wouldn't mind doing.
Yeah.
Carnegie Hall would be nice too.
Yeah.
And another venue that I've come close to playing a few times, and the band's played there, is Red Rocks in Colorado.
Yes.
Mm. So, but yeah, we've done some. It's amazing how many gorgeous theaters there are, all over North America, all over the world. I've been in some jaw-dropping places, over the last couple of years. More than that, actually. And even with Jeans and Classics, we played in some astonishingly beautiful theaters. It's
yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, great. Well, I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's
a pleasure
hearing the stories and great chatting with you, and we'll hope to one of these days we'll meet for coffee and a Starbucks as soon as you can get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds good.
Stay safe and stay healthy, okay?
Thanks,
okay.
Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.